You, get out. Yeah, you.
All right, lawyer.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. Thanks for joining us. Yes, that is a great beginning. I love that. The best way to explain what the heck is going on is simply, if you're a visual learner, like we put up a little short about that, that's the best way to do it. You know, because people are always like, no, I want to talk to the police. I just want to figure out what's going on. Next thing you know, they put themselves there. The police didn't know they were there. And then they talk themselves into basically a confession. So anyway, thanks for joining us this evening. It is July 30th. I don't know about you, but I cannot believe that it's already July 30th. Unbelievable. More than half of the year is over. And where has it all gone? I feel like I've been in trial most of my 2024, or preparing for trial, or just got out of trial. And I finally have a little bit of a break. And if you noticed yesterday, I was a little upset. I had to go to the DMV. Frank says, hey, you've never seen, go to the DMV in Florida, Scott. It could take you a day. I only had to spend 2 hours, but yet I had to return again today, and I'll probably have to go back again tomorrow. So anyway, I'm just trying to take a deep breath and relax. Just deal with it. I got a little bit of a lull. I can use it to catch up on some of my personal things. All right. You may see the clock down there at the bottom of our screen. What is that for? That is the clock for the jury deliberations. I think the jury is still going, even though it's 8:10 there on the East Coast, and that is in the Ashley Benefield case, the Black Swan murder case. Was it self-defense or was it murder? That's what the jury will decide. Miss Benefield did not come across as a very sympathetic, compassionate defendant. The prosecutors really made her out to be somewhat of a conniving, emotionless woman. But hey, after all, you know, you get married after 13 days. Maybe it's true love. I don't know. Maybe, or you think this is going to be good, or maybe this is my golden ticket. I don't know. But all we do know is that her husband is now dead. She's on trial for murder. The judge said no credible evidence as it relates to the make my day, stand your ground immunity law that existed. Take your chances with the jury. All right. Like I said, thanks for joining us. For those who haven't been here before, my name is Scott Reich. I am a practicing criminal defense attorney. Had my own practice now. January will be 25 years in practice. And prior to that, I was an attorney in the United States Marine Corps as a judge advocate, where I was a prosecutor for a short time and a defense attorney. Did a couple of other little things for them. And, but this is what I do primarily now. And of course, you know, the goal is to have an incredible podcast, retire, and just simply comment on cases. How tough could that be, right? Even though I think we were one of the first. When we started putting up videos on YouTube, you couldn't say various words. You would get demonetized. I swear to God, we had more problems. And I'm looking here because I want to see. We used to have to hold up signs. Let me show you these. I swear, when we started this podcast about 5-6 years ago, whatever it was, it doesn't really matter. And we've had our ups and downs. We've had our trials and tribulations as it relates to getting content strikes. People saying that we said bad words on the channel. We couldn't say various words, right? Now, this true crime genre, everybody is a true crime podcast host. And now, you know, YouTube has completely changed lots of things. There were times we couldn't say words like that. That's right. Sexually assaulted. I had to hold it up. I couldn't say the word gun. I can see the YouTube algorithm getting freaked out right about now. We couldn't say that word either. Even that word, we would get demonetized. Our videos would get demonetized. Yes. And this guy, we would get demonetized if we said his name. That's why even to this day, it's just habit. That guy named Jeff, we would get demonetized for saying him. Couldn't say that word, get demonetized. So it became a joke. We would hold it up so the YouTube algorithm wouldn't see it or hear it, I guess. And it was there. So anyway, we were the leaders in this. And now everybody is a true crime host. And many of them have more subscribers than I do because they do it full time. But we led the way, ladies and gentlemen. We led the way for everyone. I swear to God, that's true. Anyway, so we've been doing this. I've been practicing criminal law. I've had cases. I mean, I did a 1-month trial in March. We were completely out of the loop for a month in that particular case. So it has been very, very busy. We did a trial just a couple of weeks ago. Yes, we won. Yes. Oh, and submitting that a bill for attorney's fees, or the motion for attorney's fees to the prevailing party, because it was a civil matter. We don't really do those many, many times because they usually resolve. But when you have to go to trial on a civil matter, who are you going to take to court with you? That's right. Somebody that actually goes to trial. Somebody knows how to try a case. That's right. You take a criminal defense attorney. Even if you look at the old school lawyers that actually go try cases, they were criminal defense attorneys, ladies and gentlemen. They really were. Some of the best. There's a guy, Larry Posner, criminal defense attorney. Amazing attorney. Amazing criminal defense attorney. Now he does nothing but civil work. So anyway, think about that. So the reason I bring up my history is not to say, who cares, right? Anybody can be a podcaster. Anybody can do a little research and become a true crime podcast host. But I think what we bring is that we actually do what we're talking about, right? We know what they're saying. And the reason, like I said, we started this thing years ago is you see people on the media that didn't know the difference between an arraignment and a preliminary hearing, the burdens of proof. I mean, it was embarrassing to see people talk about it. And then we had the Watts case and we talked about the facts. Okay. And it was always interesting. I'm talking about these cases and then I'm getting calls from, parents and friends. Hey, will you help out these various people? I'm like, don't think we can. And, you don't have enough money, or I probably could. But the reality is we were explaining things. Even in the case of Lori Vallow, right? The grandparents, the Woodcocks, they called into our Patreon show. And they asked, what should you do? We can't get a response. Hey, maybe you want to contact the victim advocate people and let them know that you're not happy and things like that. Kay and Larry Woodcock, great people. Obviously, the grandparents to JJ in the Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell homicide cases. And, they would call into our show on our Patreon show and basically ask for advice. And I met them in person out at CrimeCon in Las Vegas, just wonderful people. And that case with Lori and Chad, that thing would have faded away if it were not for them. They were the ones that kept pushing it. So the point being is we call it the way we see it. We call balls and strikes here, right? Like the way a judge is supposed to do things, call balls and strikes, not caring about the particular outcome of a case. Hey, I have said, we'll have to wait and see. Maybe this is a good defense. Maybe it's not. And then you get new facts and information and you say, oh, that sucks. And then, of course, everybody gets mad at you because you changed your mind. How could you bail on this, right? Like the Karen Reed case was the most recent one. We did the Johnny Depp. And everyone's like, oh, Johnny Depp, greatest guy ever. I'm like, no, Johnny Depp is not a good guy. Okay. This was a toxic relationship and it takes two people to be in a toxic relationship. So while everyone else was saying, oh, look, I get all these views, I got all these new subscribers, I was calling the way it is. Yes, he won. He didn't get quite as much as he wanted, but he did not, he did lose also in the sense that he defamed her. And I kept saying, he's not the great guy. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a great actor. I seriously like lots of Johnny Depp stuff. I do. But, a lot of people can be a bad dude off the screen, as we saw Miss Heard was as well. So that's just what we try to do. Call balls and strikes. I mean, seriously, I have no dog in the fight. I don't get paid any more money by saying this is what the facts are, this is what the law is going to be, and why the defendant usually has a tough road ahead of them. And that's the way it's supposed to be, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, we like to think that in our legal justice system, people don't get charged if they didn't have probable cause to arrest them, right? Would a reasonable person believe that a crime was committed and that the defendant may have had something to do with it, right? Would a reasonable person believe that? And then that standard kind of flows through until you get to trial. And the defendant certainly has a right to enter a plea of not guilty, make the prosecution prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt unanimously to a jury of 12 people in a felony matter. They have a right to testify, right to present any defenses they may want to present, call witnesses. If they couldn't come voluntarily, the court could order them to come with subpoenas. And so there's lots of things the defendant can do throughout that process. And it's the defendant's decision whether he pleads guilty or proceeds to trial. And every defendant, I don't care how guilty you are, I've done cases where it was on video. And we went to trial because the client had nothing better to do. Literally nothing better to do. He was serving multiple life sentences. And he's like, I really want to go to trial. Why? Now, remember, he had been serving at a maximum security prison when he got in trouble. And his response was, well, that court reporter is really pretty. Okay, let's go do this. We got to sentencing. Well, Your Honor, this is somewhat academic. He's serving multiple life sentences in multiple states. Well, I understand it. Just make it concurrent. The judge said, no, we'll make it consecutive because it doesn't really matter. And then the client was like, well, I want to appeal my case. And I was like, well, what is there to appeal? He goes, I want to appeal my case. And I remember I went to the 10th Circuit and I'm doing oral arguments in front of the 10th Circuit. And the first question one of the appellate judges asked me is, why are we here? You even noted in your sentencing statement before the court that this is somewhat academic. And I said, well, Your Honor, just like Mr. Blank had a right to trial, he has an absolute right to an appeal as well. And we are exercising all of those rights. So anyway, we call balls and strikes. We do what we can legally and ethically within our limits to represent everybody. And as I tell every attorney or any attorney friend that I've ever talked to, listen, never met a client worth going to prison for and never been paid enough to lose my law license. Okay. So a lot of people are like, oh, you're a liar. You're a criminal defense lawyer. No, I'm not. I will not lie for a client. Like I said, not worth losing one's license over for that client that would more than likely sell you under the bus, throw you under the bus if possible, if it meant an advantage to him. Remember, when you're dealing with people that have no other options, they will try anything, including throwing their attorney who said they did a great job under the bus down the road. All right. Enough of that. Let's talk about a couple of other things. All right. We have a sponsor. All right. U.S. GoldTrust. Listen, $35 trillion is what the national debt is at right now. Okay. They are spending more money paying off interest on the national debt to people that hold the bonds to the United States than they're actually bringing in. Okay. So the reality of it is the dollar is worth nothing. So what should you do? Probably buy some gold, buy some assets that are going to keep their value because the US dollar ain't exactly doing that these days. So go to GoldTrust and in the link and take a look at it, and they will see if this is maybe right for you. Obviously, you need to do your research and take a look at it and think about rolling over some or all of your retirement into a 401k into precious metals. Remember, it's your decision. You know, you got to diversify. It doesn't hurt to have a little bit of precious metals in your retirement fund. I do, because, well, I know that the value of the dollar is almost nothing, and it's certain to come crashing down even further with the real estate binge that's going to real estate tanking, I guess I should really say, not a binge. It's going to be tanking here real soon. Anyway, to go hit the link, US Gold Trust. You don't have to buy anything. You fill out your information. Somebody will talk with you if you're interested. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't, that's okay as well. But at least you checked it out to see if it's right for you. All right. Now, I was just checking when I was doing my show prep this afternoon, because we try to follow up on the cases that we've been following, right? And Lori Vallow, the Idaho case. We know the Arizona case is still going, but, every now and then Lori Vallow. What's new with Lori Vallow? Well, lots of extensions are taking place. They filed a notice of appeal back in August of 2023, and the court reporters were still filing motions for extensions of time to prepare the transcripts, numerous extensions, because it takes a lot of time to prepare those records. And so the court granted the third extension of time for the court reporter in March. The appellate briefs were stated that they were due because the records were finally done, and they sought another extension just as of mid-July. And so apparently Ms. Vallow's opening brief will be due on August 15th. I wouldn't hold my breath on that. But it comes back to one of the things that most people do not know, okay? Kate or Kat, I see your question. Let me finish this thought and I will come to your question. The hardest working person in the courtroom, all right, it's not the attorneys. Frankly, it's not even the judge. Sometimes the court clerks, they're busy. It's not jurors in a trial. The hardest working person in that courtroom is the court reporter, okay? And if anybody's ever done any trial work and says anything different, they're lying. That they've never been in a courtroom a day in their life, okay? The court reporter has to take down every single word that everybody is doing and be able to make sense of it. And if they're really good at it, they do it contemporaneously, but they also, back it up, but they have to proof it. And a court reporter told me once, like for any trial or motions transcript, obviously they were there when it took place. They usually try to do a rough draft, so they review it again based upon kind of their memory. Then they'll listen to it. Sometimes if there's a recording of it, they'll listen to it again to check the transcription, and then they'll do a final proof. So by the time a transcript is complete, the court reporter has probably read that transcript or done it 4 times. So, we get to hear a trial once, we get to hear ourselves talk. Maybe we read a transcript down the road, but that court reporter basically has done that trial 4 times by going through and transcribing it, doing everything related to the proofreading. It is not a simple task. That's why often people will say, well, why can't I get a transcript of the record if there's a jury question? Well, because it has to go through that process. It's not the official record at that point. So it literally has to be listened to all those times and proofread. Now, you can get real time in the courtroom, but it's not accurate. Most of those court reporters are amazing, but it's not an official transcript. They're pretty good. They're going to get it right, but it hasn't gone through the process as well. So anyway, there it is. Kat, what's my thought process on the Black Swan murder case? I don't think that Ashley Benefield came across as particularly sympathetic. I didn't think she did great on the witness stand. The prosecution, it was a simple case. Now, here's where I think the defense probably has a shot. And I say that because I've done this case, ladies and gentlemen. It's a situation where you have 2 people in an argument, some sort of confrontation, and only one is coming to court because the other individual is dead. Now, remember, in most jurisdictions, at least that I'm aware of, when you state that you are acting in self-defense and you present some evidence that you were acting in self-defense, how do you get self-defense? You have to present a scintilla of evidence of that, that evidence to support the judge's finding to get that jury instruction. So how do you do that in a self-defense case? Well, unless you got a video or something, the defendant normally has to testify and say, yes, there was a confrontation. I did not begin the confrontation. I was the peaceful one. The other person was the aggressor. I felt as though I was in fear of death or serious bodily injury. And what did you do, defendant, when you thought you were in fear of death or serious bodily injury? I shot him. And what happened? I shot him right between the eyes and he's dead. Thank you very much. Prosecutor gets up, cross-examined. You were the initial aggressor, weren't you? No. You knew that he came over the house to be peaceful. No. Okay. I mean, the defendant is not going to give the answers that the defense wants, but it doesn't matter because the defendant then gets the instruction for self-defense. So then how do you prove or disprove beyond a reasonable doubt, right? So when you have an offense, the government has to prove that case beyond a reasonable doubt. The defense gives an affirmative defense, which says, you're right, I did it, but I'm innocent because I have protection under the law. I was acting in self-defense. Well, once that self-defense is raised, then the burden goes back to the prosecution to disprove self-defense beyond a reasonable doubt. That's kind of tough to do when you don't have anybody else disputing that, right? Because the other person's dead. So, we'll see. I don't know. We took a quick poll here of The Office, the hardest working man in show business. Frank, our producer, technical advisor, researcher, writer, his position of, and he has watched, I think, all of the trial. He thinks that she'll be found guilty. Did I state that correctly, Frank? Yeah. That's what Frank thinks. And I think Frank is batting 1,000 when it comes to picking verdicts lately. Haven't you, Frank? I don't think you've been wrong. I mean, he watches them all the way through. So we'll see what happens. I think, I don't know. I mean, there's a legal argument. Can they disprove beyond a reasonable doubt that it wasn't self-defense? I don't know. I'm a defense guy. I'm going to root for the defense. But I don't know. She just wasn't very sympathetic. There were a couple holes in the story, but the good thing is, I mean, for the defense, there's no other witnesses. You got a neighbor who heard it, right? The government's case in chief took a day, wasn't it, Frank? A day and a half. It was very quick. Yeah, it was quick. It took about as long to seat a jury. I mean, that's always the joke in cases. It's like, man, it's going to take longer to seat a jury than it is to actually present evidence in this particular case. And that was kind of this case. The defense has kind of dragged it out. I mean, the defense should have been ready to call their first witness last week, Thursday afternoon, I think, when the prosecution rested. And here we are, Tuesday, and they just got the verdict, or they got the 4 hours and 43 minutes ago. They're in Florida. So we'll have to wait and see. Mama Pink says, I believed her testimony. I saw real tears and heard real stuffy, runny nose. The times her voice wavered, where at one point, I'm a survivor myself. I've been there. I didn't catch her cross. The cross and the district attorney in her closing statement was basically like, oh yeah, you saw her tears. You saw that. But as soon as I got up there, or as soon as she got off the stand, all the crocodile tears stopped. Now, I can say that that is usually one of the best arguments you can make for your client is that did you see the victim on the stand? The big crocodile tears rolling down her face. Ooh, boo-hoo, ooh, so scared, so scared. But as soon as I started, the prosecutor started cross-examining that witness, did you notice that it turned to anger? Did you notice that it turned, exactly to no tears, no boo-hoo, crocodile tears. Oh, it's so scary. Ooh, woo, woo, right? All that went away. and they were angry and they were mean and they wouldn't answer the question and they got it and they started yelling at me and the judge had to tell her to sit down and answer the question. Huh. Do you think that that's something that could have happened that night? That maybe she was the initial aggressor? Yeah. Now Benefield held it together, decent on cross, but there were some things. What's she going to do? But yeah, the crocodile tears go away. If you're going to do the crocodile tear thing, you got to do it. You got to be consistent. You got to do it on direct and cross. I'm telling you, I've made that argument many, many times. I don't know, ladies and gentlemen, you're the observers, you're the fact finders in the courtroom. Rely upon your notes and your collective memory of what you saw. But do you recall when, Miss Benefield was on the stand? Oh, all the big crocodile tears and, so emotional and so tragic and blah, blah, blah. But on cross-examination, it all went away. Think about that, ladies and gentlemen. Use your common sense, ladies and gentlemen. We'll have to wait and see. Mrs. Sabre, I believe parts of her testimony, but I believe she wanted him gone at all costs and took the chance. Yeah, see, that's the thing. It was just a little too, I don't know, just a little too convenient, I think, is kind of the way it works through. I don't know. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. In my opinion, it really doesn't matter because the jurors are the ones that really matters. But I think that, Texas Brand 479, I believe she believes her story. That's good. I don't. She's guilty. But that's the thing. Like I said, I mean, I've done this case. I've done this case numerous times. And what it boils down to is, okay, I've had conversations with like the prosecutors. Listen, I'm telling you what my client's going to say. He was in fear of death or serious bodily injury. How are you going to shift that burden? Like, we're going to take our chance. We're playing with house money. We haven't had any murders here in the last 5 years. We're going to let the jury decide. This family's mean, vocal, etc. So we're just going to take our chance and maybe we'll get a conviction. That's the way they think about it. I don't know. I think that's the legal thing. Remember, the burden shifts to disprove beyond a reasonable doubt at that point. Do you think they did that? I don't know. I really just don't know. Okay. We can obviously talk about that more if you got a question. And I forgot to mention, we were going to do this tonight. You can do call in. We decided to do call in. So if you'd like to call in and ask about a question, and don't call and say, "Hey, Scott, you're great." Just boom, straight to your question, because we've got a live show going on here. But the other thing we need to remind you of is that it's live, but there's a delay because of the phone. So you have to talk to your phone, and you cannot use your computer. Okay, there's a delay. Don't listen through your computer. There's a delay. You have to listen to your phone. Okay. Scott, the demonstration on the stand made it look like she shot him for doing the hokey. I'm assuming that's pokey. Yeah, hokey cokey. She's a gold digger, Peter said. Yeah, and that's the problem. There's just so many problems with her story, right? She meets this dude. What do they get married in 13 days? They're living in Charleston. And then, we're going to resolve. We're going to move back to Maryland. We're getting along. But she didn't want to share, but they were going to share, move back to the same state so that they could have custody of their kid. And this is what I just, it's kind of hard to me to say. In a world where there's so many people that parents don't want to participate in their children's lives, you've got two parents that want to participate. Maybe they can't get along, but, for the betterment of the kids, the best interest of the child, you would think that you would hope that they would be able to get along for that child. It really makes her look like a kind of sleazy person that you've got somebody that wants to be involved in the kid's life, have two parents, for God's sakes. And she didn't want anything to do with it. Did she take that shot? Did she take that opportunity? I don't know. It's a legal one. Did she act in self-defense? Did they disprove beyond a reasonable doubt? Right? Prosecution didn't prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. It's your solemn oath and obligation to say not guilty, right? I don't know. I mean, it's not a complicated case. It is not a complicated case. And the fact that we're already now, including jury selection, into day 7, going into day 8, I mean, this thing should have been done Friday, because the prosecution rested on Thursday afternoon, and the judge was like, "Where's your witness?" "Oh, we got this witness, judge." And then they had to have a Daubert hearing to see if the opinions were going to be allowed in to be the expert. It just took a lot of time. So we'll see. He punched the dog and threw the cat, Mad Hatter. I get it. One could certainly say that that's enough to make one believe that you were next. You were in reasonable fear of death or serious bodily injury. Mama Pink, in her situation, no one believed me. Everybody loved him. Monster behind closed doors. Very good and never leaving a mark. I agree. I mean, they had their DV expert testify to a portion of that. Don't get me wrong. Listen, I've represented some really bad dudes. I've represented people where women have shown up literally with sunglasses on saying, "I want you to represent my husband." "Oh, really? Who did this to you?" "Oh, my husband." "Okay. You sure about that? You sure you really want to do that?" "Yeah." "Okay." I've seen it all. I've seen abused women, and, but I represent a client, and it's not my job to look out for that particular person. I know that sounds mean and callous, but that's what I'm hired to represent my client. Everybody else be damned. And I've seen it. I've seen it. I've seen people say, yeah, I've heard the wives say, "Oh, if I was a better housewife, this wouldn't have happened. If I was a better spouse, this wouldn't have happened. I deserve it." I've heard it. That cycle of violence stuff that if you ever go to jury select, if you ever sit on a DV type case, you have the honeymoon period, the romance period, the apologetic period, the cycle of violence, then it all kind of begins again. And it goes back. And why do people do it? And then financially, they're unable to leave. There's kids. I mean, I'm not saying it. I mean, I have no respect for anybody that wants to hit a woman. I mean, seriously. Maybe it's just because I must be old school. I was brought up that you never, ever, ever hit a woman, hit a girl. Raising my son and my daughter, they were about the same age. There was 2 years difference, 2 years and 5 days separating them. And they would fight. And my son, "Dad, Nicholas hit me." "No, she started it." I told my son, "I don't care if she starts it. I don't care if she hits you. You never, ever, ever hit a girl." Right. And if he did, I'd be the first one to knock his block off, just like my mother told that of me. Right. And I know my mother saw a lot of that from her father. You just never, ever, ever do that. And so it goes on. And I've seen women that refuse to show up to court. They'll take a contempt rather than testify in a domestic violence case. I have seen it. And that if I've seen it where the victim is absolutely terrified of the defendant. And they're like, send an investigator up. "I will not be there. I'm afraid that he will kill me. If he gets out of custody, I believe he will kill me. But I believe he'll get out one day. So I'd rather not to participate because I think he will come kill me." I've seen those type of situations. So yes, Mama Pig, I know that it happens. We'll just have to wait and see. Yeah, in Texas Brand, I too. I mean, I remember the allegation was made of the dogs, but I don't remember any particular abuse. And just because they killed the dog or hurt the dog or animal, I mean, that's not enough. What if I went home and kicked Miss Winnie the Bulldog, which I would never do, but that does not give the lovely Miss Kristen then the right to shoot me, thinking she's next. You really have to have that immediate fear of death or serious bodily injury. Don't commit dating. Okay, that's sorry, I clicked on that. I do believe he admitted it just to protect his daughter from her. I believe she was the abuser and abused him. Yeah, I believe the courts, though, hadn't found any credible evidence of abuse of any kind. So, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, it does take place. All right. And people say that it doesn't. Well, they're lying. Okay. Domestic abuse takes place. Sexual assaults take place. Does either side get a pure pass on it? No, because I've seen people make false allegations on both sides, whether it be like a sexual assault on a DV. But yes, there are lots and lots of bad cases that are totally legitimate. No doubt in my mind. But if I've seen cases, yes, not in all, but I have seen it where false allegations have been made. So yeah, I understand, it's an ugly world out there, ladies and gentlemen. That's why you need to check out who you're hanging out with, which is why you need to go to crimetalksearch.com. Check that out, right? If somebody's coming into your life, check them out to see if they have issues. See if maybe they're on one of those public registries you hear so much about. Have they been in custody? Have they been convicted? What were they convicted of? Don't you think you'd like to know when somebody comes into your life, going to be spending time with you, your children? That's right, ladies and gentlemen, the children, right? Check these people out. Maybe, and hopefully it comes up zeros, nada, zilch, nothing. But wouldn't you feel a little more safe if you went to crimetalksearch.com, sign up for that background subscription service that while you can do as many background searches as you would like, and you get a report literally prepared and sent to you while you wait with all kinds of information like we talked about, convictions, arrests. Are they on those public registries? Do they owe money? Hey, are they married? Check that out. All right. Maybe sometimes people don't tell you the whole truth up front. Check them out. crimetalksearch.com. All right. Let's see. Because they get demonetized for using certain words, censor stuff, avoid the hassle. Let's see here. This is Alpha Femme Christine. Because they get demonetized for using certain words, so people censor stuff to avoid the hassle. Yeah. I'm telling you, it was, why do channels abbreviate? Yeah, in response to this, why do channels abbreviate words like DV, SA, and others? Because like I said, you get demonetized. If you were watching earlier, we went through it all. We were the leader. We were the ones. I hate to say it, there were not that many true crime anything when we started this podcast, right? So if I wanted to say that name, if I said that name, I'd get demonetized. If I said that, the video would get demonetized. If I even said that on a true crime, I went round and round with some AI bot at Google that it's true crime. We're talking about stuff that's on the evening news, and you won't let me use those words. It finally got through to somebody, but we were trying to do a video. But if you said that word, you would get demonetized. I'm telling you, it was a struggle. That was when Julie was here. If you said that, it would demonetize you, right? And apparently when I brought in my antique firearm to talk about the Alec Baldwin case, that video got demonetized as well. And they were threatening to shut it down because apparently they have a policy that you can't show a firearm on a live stream because they don't know what you're going to do. God forbid you actually watched it and we made it clear that it was a completely safe weapon. We went through all the safety checks. We didn't point it at anybody. It was an antique. And there was no chance that it was going to go off. There's no ammunition that would do it. Nope. They don't care. They don't care. And try talking to anybody at any of the Metas, any of the YouTubes. It doesn't happen, right? When they have a new product they want you to push, they'll call you. That's it. Hey, I got this other question though. Yeah, no, sorry. I have a friend that has, I think he's over almost 700,000 subscribers, still has difficulty talking to a real person. Okay. All right, let's take a look. How is Julie's pilot career going? I am assuming that it is going very, very well. At one point, she finished up some training here. I know she went back east, was doing some things. She was going to do a little bit of work for us, and it just didn't happen. I think she got very busy. So I'm assuming it's going very, very well, which is good. Sally wants to talk about a former prison inmate says Chris Watts has to cause problems to get attention from the DOC because when things settle down, things get rough for him. So we will hear from him. Yeah, I mean, he probably wants to stay in solitary confinement. I mean, the reality of it is, if you're a high profile person and you would think like, who cares? Chris Watts, he killed his wife and 2 kids. There's lots of people in prison that did that, right? But people usually don't like people that harm kids, right? A lot of people in prison had some pretty screwed up childhoods, and they know how it's messed them up, which is probably sometimes why they're there. So yes, there is for certain hierarchy and pecking order. All right. And if you have a particular crime, you will probably have bad things happen to you when you least expect it. So if you cause trouble, then guess what? Then you get sent back to solitary confinement. You get to stay out of general population. I've had many clients over the years that get sent out to other prisons. It's just as, it's a precaution because they think that, we got the Aurora theater shooter. Wasn't my client, but he got moved out of state for his own protection, thinking, no one will know who he is. But, it doesn't take long for somebody to ask somebody on the outside, or these days, somebody to use their tablet and Google somebody's name and find out that there's somebody. Jeffrey Dahmer, right? At some point, somebody's going to try to get that guy, or they got him because he was a high profile guy. General rule, don't want to go to prison. Certainly don't want to show up as somebody that's abused children. You certainly don't want to go there as somebody that has abused women as well, right? Little side note. I mean, and this is, I've never been to prison other than to visit clients and view crime scenes and things of that nature. And, a lot of accidents happen in prison. Lots of people die in prison, and not just from old age. And there's some really bad dudes in there. Okay. I mean, like some bad dudes. They would mess you up. And I had a guy once years ago. He had a minor little case. And I'm sitting there, I'm going through his criminal history with the dude. I'm like, like all these crimes have you as you're just a drug dealer, man. A couple weapons, but drugs. There must be some sort of mistake on this whole sexual assault. And it looks like it happened you were in prison. I mean, that must have been a big misunderstanding, right? And the dude looks at me across the table and he goes, there's no misunderstanding. I raped that dude. And I'm like, oh, okay. The reality was the guy that they raped was a child molester, and they did terrible things to him with various objects in various orifices of his body. Okay. So yes, a lot of those things that you hear about that happen to guys in prison, it's a real deal. Okay. And I've represented those guys where they will literally be like, hey, Scott, I need you to do me a favor. I need a copy of my minimus, but it needs to show this other charge has gone away. And I'm like, well, I can't modify the minimus to give that to you. I'm sorry. Because people are like, hey, I want to see your paperwork, man. I want to see your paperwork. So it's a real deal. You don't want to go to prison. Okay. The inmates, it is, I mean, the best way to describe it, and I'm not, like I said, I haven't been there, but people that I've known, I mean, it is like, medieval kind of stuff. The strongest survive. If you're weak, you usually have to submit to get protection to survive. I don't want to sound like an expert. I'm not. Just what I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. That's for sure. Let's see here. Oh yeah, Mama Pink, our latest thing, the voter intimidation case. Yep, that was fun. Yep, Dahmer kept playing with his food, pretending body parts. Yeah, I've had it where, you know, people keep talking about, oh, they were doing stuff to kids, and you know, it's just weird, right? Old Jared, right? The subway guy, he's over here at the federal detention center in Inglewood at the camp. But apparently people talk about him. All he keeps talking about are young girls. So it's just weird, ladies and gentlemen. It's just very, very odd, weird. We'll have to wait and see. I can't. Let's see here. Explain the skirting the system. DA. Okay, I'm just looking at one of these comments here. Does nobody want to call in, Frank? Did I give him the number?
No, we have not.
Let me give you the number if you want to call in. We've got a little bit of time remaining here on our live program. 725-228-TALK, 725-8255. Only rule is you have to talk on the phone. You can't talk watching the computer because the delay will mess us all up and it sounds very, very awkward. And you don't want to do that as well. So, and, you know, yesterday, like I said, even the show that we did yesterday, I just felt really grumpy. I don't know what it was. But everything about, you know, doing the show prep, I mean, there were no good, nice stories. And I think it was just one of those days where, as a criminal defense attorney, and it takes a lot to do this job. What's the word I'm looking for? It takes, I don't know. You have to figure out how to turn it off, but still have a little bit of compassion as well, because these people are obviously in their time of need. They've made a mistake, probably the lowest point of their life. They're in jeopardy of losing their freedom, their family, their job. And, you know, obviously, well, don't commit crime. That's the obvious response. But okay, now that we're here, we got to deal with the reality of it. So some days you're a life coach. Someday you're your father figure. Someday you're a judge, so to speak. Get telling them this is the way it's going to happen. It's going to be ugly. We got a call. Who do we got, Frank? Michelle? Good evening, Michelle. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. What's on your mind? Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Florida, and I am calling about the Brian Kohberger case.
Okay.
I'm just wondering, like, I can hear myself. It's echoing, so it's hard for me to
turn your computer down.
Hold on, I gotta put on.
Turn your computer down. Just talk through the phone. All right. Since we're talking about the Brian Kohberger case, we'll have to bring out the K-bar. Our demonstrative aid, our prop. It's a real K-bar.
Careful.
That I've had since 1988. All right. But go ahead. Brian Kohberger.
Yes. Brian Kohberger. So I don't know what is going on in that city, because I really feel like something crazy is going on with that case. Nothing about it smells right.
Well, tell me, what do you think?
A year and a half looking into it.
What's bugging you about it? I mean, it has been going on a year and a half.
Everything. Okay, so they arrest him on this genetic genealogy DNA, which I'm a true crime junkie, so I know all the investigative stuff. So that's typically used for cold cases, and they really haven't used it. They really haven't used it in like a current case, especially when they're looking like within a couple weeks of this. They're trying to do this, and they can't get that DNA back that quick. Now, there is no other DNA in that house from the unaliver, except for 20 skin cells inside a button snap, and he supposedly used an edged weapon to unalive 4 people with like over 50 some.
Yeah, don't forget.
You know,
the sheath was there.
That word with an S.
The sheath was underneath.
That's
the
it,
body.
though. That's it. They don't have it. That's it. That is the only thing. And you know that if somebody does that to even one person, they're usually going to have injuries on themselves. And there's definitely going to be some DNA mixture going on there. They don't have his car. They say they have his car, but that's just like, I feel like the whole PCA is made up. And they basically told us in one of the last court filings that the PCA doesn't matter anymore. And I don't understand how they can keep this. Now, here's my thing. Like, I really do think that this man is innocent, but I'm not so sure that I'm willing to put my life online. You know what I'm saying? But I want somebody to give me some actual proof, because I don't understand how they can have this man locked up for a year and a half. By the time he actually goes to trial, it's going to be at least 2.5, at least.
Yeah.
And there's no actual physical evidence to put him there. And his lawyer,
well,
I'm sorry, I know you said.
Go ahead, finish your thought.
I was just going to say, I know you said lawyers, can say my client is innocent, whatever, blah, 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 blah. But this is like, typically you don't see defense attorneys saying, I don't know if you saw the court hearing where they both stood up and said that, but there's
where they truly believe.
Main attorney,
where she stated she truly believes that their client is innocent.
Yeah, and both of their both of the females have said that, and the male said, something about they're trying to kill this man, and they have no evidence to hold him. Well, and I don't I looked into it. Go ahead. Sorry, I could talk all day about this.
I mean, I get your frustration, and imagine if you were sitting in a cell being accused of something that you did not do.
Right.
Now, obviously,
right, and that's where I'm coming from.
The prosecution has, done their investigation. They went to a judge. A judge said, close enough. It's a very low standard to actually arrest somebody, right? Probable cause, or a reasonable person believe a crime was committed. That's it. And that defendant had something to do with it.
So I didn't sleep for weeks over this case, because it was keeping me up at night, because the whole thing, like him doing that in the amount of time that they said that he did it, plus the vehicle that they're trying to say was his wasn't even parked yet. So it even minimized his time even more. I mean, we're talking like 7 minutes.
Yeah.
And he has no DNA in his car, no DNA at his work, no DNA at his apartment of any of the victims.
But the the prosecution is going to try and explain why they found none was because that he cleaned his car out immediately after that.
Because he took a shower curtain with him. How do you do that with 4 people 50 times at least? For one of them, at least 50, we know, but I don't know the extent of the other injuries. But that is messy.
If 3 or 4 of them are asleep, it's a heck of a lot easier than actually having to fight somebody. I think you remember,
but they've proven that they weren't asleep now.
I believe the one male may have woken up, is what they opine. But the reality of it is, I mean, if they're asleep, it's a lot easier to go up and stab somebody. You stab them in the right spot, the right way, you cut something the right way. There's not going to be a whole lot of resistance, because you're going to kill them instantly, depending on where you strike them. Now, it is a little odd that the sheath just happens to be below one of the victims. So maybe there was some sort of a struggle.
And a single source DNA. Like, there's no body fluids on that. I'm sorry. Like, the whole thing is, it's not.
Here's the thing.
It can't be true.
The process is we're going to have to wait and see. And this happens all the time in criminal cases, right? I mean, I got clients.
You have to make T-shirts that say that, Scott.
The what?
Wait and see. We'll have to wait and see. You have to make T-shirts for your merch store.
Yeah.
We'll have to wait and see.
That's the reality of it, right? We don't have access to all of the discovery in the case. We don't have access to what the defense knows. And don't get me wrong, I think Kohberger, he got lucky with the attorneys that he got. They're very skilled, very talented. Lori Vallow, I thought she was totally guilty, but she got a couple of duds for attorneys, man. They didn't even put up a fight. So the ones that Kohberger got, he got lucky. They are going to, it's going to be a knockdown, drag out fight on this particular case. And I think it's quite evident that the prosecutors do not have the skill or the knowledge set to even come close to competing with the attorneys in this particular case. And remember, the defense hasn't even started to fight yet. Okay. We're still at change of venue.
It's like, God, this guy is what if they finally prove his actual factual innocence, like not just a not guilty, a factual innocence, because I honestly think that his team is not only going to prove his innocence, but they are going to show who is actually guilty. And I have gone through this every way but Sunday, to the point where I've even considered, is he like an agent undercover to expose corruption in this town? Because like there is just so much weird crap that. So listen, okay, go with me on this.
The one thing you'll find out in small towns is there's always something weird going on, because everyone knows everyone. And I'm telling you, small town cases,
I grew up in a small town.
They
so I
are
get that.
Weird.
Okay? Yeah.
But here's the thing.
I just want to understand how they can hold him.
Probable cause has been found.
But okay.
He hasn't.
Let's talk about that, because they were.
They indicted him.
They were supposed to have their preliminary hearing.
And then they indicted him.
They had the preliminary hearing scheduled for 6 months out. That's supposed to be within 2 weeks of an arrest. They didn't even have it scheduled for 6 months.
Unless the defendant waives his right.
Grand jury.
Unless he waives his right to that hearing. Like here in Colorado, you have a right to a hearing from the second advisement. From the time you get your charges, you have a right to a preliminary hearing within 35 days. But you can waive that. And on a complicated case, everybody waives a 35-day rule, because you want to figure out what is going on in that particular case. And you want to do your investigation.
But don't you want to make them, if you're innocent, wouldn't you want to make them show what they have? Because
they didn't get an option to do that.
I really think he's innocent.
They didn't get an option. They
what?
They were set for a preliminary hearing.
No, I know. That's what they did. They went behind their backs and indicted them instead.
But they didn't do anything illegal. That happens all the time. In some states, that's required. In federal court, that's required. You have to proceed via indictment, not for just complaint and information. It wasn't anything, did they use it to buy a little bit of time? Sure. But was it anything illegal? No. Was it unethical? No.
They don't know
think
their
so.
Heads from their butts.
Well, I mean, that's the way it's going to be.
And they don't even know where the evidence is that's supposed to put him, lock him away. Oh, he's so guilty. He's the one. We got him. He's our man. Like, that investigation should still be ongoing. And they made it sound like they're done.
Listen.
Yeah.
This happens in literally every case where they say, we've got our guy or we've got our woman, right? We believe we've got a case closed. Somebody gets arrested and you can say, but I'm innocent. And the attorney will come in and say, hey, I understand you're innocent. You have a right to a hearing within 14 days. I got this busy schedule going on. I got a trial coming up. I really won't be able to have a chance to take a look at it. So you got to waive the 35-day rule. Hey, you only get one bite at this apple. They're talking death penalty on you. I don't want to do something that's going to jeopardize you getting, killed. Let's take our time. Let's do it right. Settle in, sit down, shut up, and let me do my job. That's probably what the conversation was basically like. Nobody forced his arm. The judge inquired of him, are you knowingly doing this voluntarily? Yes. Giving up your right to have that hearing, within the 14 days. Yes, yes, yes. So that was an informed decision on his part. And he's got to wait it out. He's the one that waived speedy trial. He originally said he wanted speedy trial. It was a stunt on the part of the defense. And the prosecutor said, like, well, let's go, let's do it. And then the defense is like, well, I guess we need to waive speedy trial because we got a lot of work to do. It was a stunt. It was a stunt by the defense.
They've both had stunts because
I agree.
The prosecution said they were ready and they don't have their shit together either. They haven't even handed over all their discovery.
I agree. But
the evidence that they supposedly arrested him on.
Well, welcome to the world of criminal prosecution and defense. Look at the Richard Allen case in Indiana. They're still fighting over evidence that needs to be turned over. It happens all the time. Everybody thinks the prosecution is always the good guy. They're always the guys in the white hats. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're incompetent.
I don't think so.
Sometimes they're
That's what I'm trying to figure out, what the hell is going on.
Sometimes they're in completely over their head. And unfortunately, if you're a defendant accused of a crime, you have to sit there and you say there is no evidence. Well, there is some evidence to suggest that he's the guy. And they do have DNA, and we'll have to see whether it stands up to cross-examination. But you don't get to just say, oh, it's BS now, throw out the case. That's not going to happen. That's not the way it works. So the defendant has to sit down.
No, I know that.
Shut
That's
up and wait.
People say that. Why isn't he screaming from the rooftop that he's inside? I said, what? Are they going to open the gate and let him out if he does that? Like,
no,
it's not going to help him.
And I'm sure his attorney told him to shut his freaking mouth so that he doesn't say anything stupid. And the fact that nothing's been leaked about his statements means he's actually probably smart enough to get it. Okay. And here I've had clients all the time where literally there is no evidence other than the word of somebody else. The classic case, an allegation of sexual assault, right? Maybe there's DNA, maybe there's not. DNA, guy says, yeah, we had sex, but it was consensual. The guy has to wait in jail until his trial date to have his case heard, which is 6 months from the date you say not guilty, where I practice. 70 days in the state or in the federal court, but it always goes out longer. But that's just the way it is. And people go to trial.
Wasn't Chad Daybell out on bail?
Yeah, but if you can't make bail, I mean, if you were,
they don't even have bail. He didn't even have a bail. Like, he's held on no bail.
He couldn't make it anyway. It's a death penalty case. There's a greater burden when it comes to death penalty case.
So is Chad Daybell's.
And he didn't he never even attempted to make a bond. And he had one. Like, so what?
No, Chad was out. Chad Daybell was out, wasn't he?
No. He was in custody. The day that they found the bodies on the property, he got arrested. No, he was never. No,
I thought.
No, I don't even think they ever argued for a lower bond because he sold his house. He had no property. He gave it to the attorney. But that's just the way it goes. And I hate to say it. And yes, if he goes to trial, let's say Kohberger goes to trial and he's acquitted, he has no recourse because the government has immunity because they were acting within their official capacity, unless they could show that somebody lied or fabricated something. The courts blessed it. So they're acting within, they believe they're acting in good faith. It's just the way the system works. Sorry, sucks. Sorry I had to spend a couple years of your life in a, 12 by 12 jail cell. Sucks being you. But hey, congratulations, you won. That's what happens. That's just the way it is. It's the way it happens. So,
and his whole life is ruined.
Well, yeah, if he's, who knows these days, if you are accused,
if he is actually innocent.
if he's acquitted, he'll be able to hit the true crime circuit, I'm sure, and be able to make a fortune in speaking fees. But the reality of it is they haven't done anything illegal. Just because you don't like the evidence or you think that he is, innocent, still got to go through the process. I tell clients all the time, why this is BS. This needs to go away. I have to explain to them, no, it's not going to go away. There's no magic motion to dismiss of lack of evidence or everybody thinks I'm innocent motion. That's the process.
Yeah.
Here's the offer. If you don't want it from the DA, you're not entitled to an offer. Let's go to trial. Let's go do it. Okay.
But if Anne and her team disproves every scintilla of evidence that's in that PCA, that's still doesn't mean jack shit. Like, he still has to go to trial.
Yes. I mean, they have to turn over any reports that they're going to bring out, expert reports and findings. So the prosecution gets to take a look at it, and the prosecution is going to say, ooh, they're wrong, or ooh, they're right. Maybe we need to back off of this. But the reality of it is now everybody's so entrenched. They've all made their public statements. This case is going to go to trial. Okay. Unless maybe Kohberger actually did do it and they come to him and say, hey, plead guilty, and we'll take death off of the table. Now, if he's truly innocent, he's going to say, I didn't do it. Let's go to trial. If he's guilty, he's going to say, I'll take the deal. Right? Kind of like a Chris Watts type of thing. So you just
maybe,
need,
unless,
but let me
unless
warn
he's
you,
a true
Michelle, you need to be
narcissist,
careful.
people wanna
A
say.
lot of people, you know, they jump to a particular side and they don't know
No,
everything
I'm
that
very
the defense
open-minded.
knows.
That's why I called you,
Okay.
because I want somebody to say something to me that'll help me
Well,
sleep
listen,
better at night. Because I
Brian
just feel like he's
Kohberger,
an innocent man.
Brian Kohberger, you know, Brian Kohberger, for whatever reason, put himself in a very precarious situation. Let's face it. The police did not just randomly pick him and say, oh, we're going to put it on Brian Kohberger. And, you know, we've planted his DNA. Now, if that's the case, everyone who did that should go to prison for a very long time. But just like I told you, I've never met a, you know, client worth going to jail for. I've never been paid enough money to lose my law license. Most people in law enforcement are of the mindset that, hey, if he's a bad guy, if we can't get him this time, we'll get him again. But I'm certainly not going to jeopardize my freedom to frame somebody for a crime. Did that happen in the past? Sure. Will it happen in the future? I'm sure it will. Listen, he's got DNA that they found. Whether it's legit or not, we're going to have to wait for trial. But to say, oh, it's BS, we don't know. Okay?
No,
DNA is a
just
crazy
asking,
thing. Sometimes DNA
I know,
will be there when you would not expect it to be, and sometimes it is. And it is what it is. It's there. Okay? And I've said the biggest problem Brian Kohberger has is explaining how his DNA got there. Now, actually, the prosecution has to explain
but it's
that
on
it's
a
there.
movable object.
Doesn't matter. It's a freaking knife sheath.
It's on a movable.
It's a knife sheath.
That's my point. Is that somebody could have planted it there? It was placed under a
but
body.
Here's the thing. This is the thing. Okay, and this is where a lot of people in true crime really get messed up. Somebody could have planted it there. Okay, you got one question that you just asked the detective. Well, somebody could have planted it there, right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Who? Tell me who. Even on the defense, even though you don't have to prove anything.
Good ideas.
Okay, but here's the thing.
No,
even on the defense, the defense has no burden to prove anything. But if you're going to make allegations like that and try to suggest that somebody else planted it, well, you better have some evidence to back it up, because otherwise the prosecution is going to.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I think Anne's doing.
Well, I haven't seen anything yet. And if she had it and she said, I can prove my client's factual innocence, here's the proof, Mr.
She's
District
waiting
Attorney.
for the damn discovery so that she can have Cy do his work.
Okay.
They haven't even gotten their drive test work done.
All right.
And that was part of what they arrested him with.
And that probably works out to the benefit of the defense if they don't turn it over, because then they can't use it in trial. But my point is, you can't make hypothetical allegations as though they're true unless you back it up. I have to tell people all the time.
No,
it doesn't matter what I believe.
I understand that.
It doesn't matter what I think. It only matters what you can prove. And unless you got somebody that says, hey, I was there and I had Brian touch the sheath of my new K-bar and he touched it, and then I took it and planted it there underneath the body of a crime scene of a quadruple homicide, that ain't happening. So unless you got somebody, unless you got an eyewitness,
I want you to remember,
Michelle, unless you got an eyewitness,
there's two of them.
Unless you got an eyewitness, objection, speculation, sustained. Move along, counsel.
There's two eyewitnesses, but I want you to remember this conversation in 1.5 to 2 years when he gets acquitted. All right.
All right. I will save this. Mark this day. Write it down on the big board, Frank. We'll see what happens. I really, honestly,
Brian
I don't know.
Kohberger, factually innocent.
Yeah.
Michelle from Florida.
All right. Thank you.
Don't get angry at me, Scott. This was supposed to be a fun conversation.
Have
You're
a
mad
fun
at me.
night. Hey, I mean, I think we had a great time, right? I mean, I don't know if he did it. We'll have to wait and see, right? Have to get that made.
We'll have to wait and see. You got to get t-shirts.
Right? Just like my other t-shirt here.
Frank,
just
put
like
it on a t-shirt.
T-shirt that the fan subscriber sent me here. My
like Rex
Heuermann.
Heuermann.
right?
Don't forget to throw away the crust. That's pretty awesome.
Amazing. But make sure you finish the crust, right? That's
See, that's where they use genetic genealogy, and that makes sense. Not in a fresh case where that's just weird. The whole thing's weird. Doesn't make sense,
quadruple murder that had no leads.
Done in 7 minutes. 7 minutes, which doesn't even work. It's like 5 minutes because the car that they say is his isn't even his. Or he's not even parked yet when they say the crime starts.
I can't
the
go
whole
into
thing is the whole thing.
I can't go into great detail, but the lot of that crime work wasn't done at my understanding. It was done in labs back east, and I've talked to some people that say, "Hey, it is what it is. Take it for what you want."
The DNA?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
It was done by credible people. They had no dog in the fight. We'll have to wait and see. That's the biggest thing. That's what I love about this job, right? You never know what's going to happen. There's always going to be new facts. You just got to be careful by picking one side and riding that horse. I've been there. I've done that, right? I got burned on many cases particularly when I was younger. A client would come in and tell me their story. I'd be like, oh, this is outrageous. Oh my God. The righteous indignation was just oozing from everywhere, right?
See, I'm not like that though.
And then I got the facts, and I'm glad I didn't run into court and spew all that righteous indignation, because I would look like a fool right now.
Yeah.
So
Karen Reed is so freaking guilty. I want to fucking punch her in the throat because she should be in prison. And I went into that trial thinking she was innocent. So but my mind changed day one.
The portion of the jury wanted to convict her on at least one count, and that's all it takes. So, all right, Michelle.
I think more than that. I think her lawyers. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. See, open up those call lines. It gets a little feisty, but we were respectful, weren't we, Michelle? That's right. And like I said, we'll have to wait and see. I don't know what's going to happen to Kohberger. I'm just telling you, somebody that's tried many a case that had some DNA in it. If you can't really explain how that DNA got there, right? I had this case once where it was a double homicide, sexual assault, and how did my client's semen get into the other woman's anus? Oh, that was a doozy. Yeah, you can't trust that stuff. Anybody can put that there, right? So I'm just being, listen, I get it. People pick sides and they often focus on that. I've been there. I've had clients where I would come in and I'd be like, oh my God, this is great. And then I get the discovery and it's not anything like the client just told me that took place. And you're just like, after a while, you get burned a couple of times. And you're like, well, let's wait and see what the discovery says. Let's wait and see. Yes, sometimes you have to do that. Wait and see. And things will change. And as evidence comes in, your opinion changes. I've told people, you got a great case. Ooh. And then we got that pesky DNA evidence, which changed everything. So now I have to give you, I think if I was a betting man, your odds went from winning to possibly losing. That's the reality of the job. And yes, you can go in and make the argument, but you have to always be assessing what's taking place, reevaluating, and how is this going to play not only to a jury. And I'm telling you, as we go to the official CrimeTalk K-Bar that I purchased, or I got given to me in the United States Marine Corps back in '88, for goodness sakes, ladies and gentlemen, right? How could that get there? This little button, this K-Bar it still sticks, right? And when they're new, they're really tough. And what do you have to do when you take that out or you clamp it again? I'm telling you, this thing is tough. And what could happen? And I bet you that if they swab this little bad boy right here, they'd have some DNA on there, right? From the sweat of my hand, from my little hand here. That's how easily it could get there. Heck, if they swab the DNA on my desk here, they'd probably find DNA. If somebody else walked over here and Frank had cleaned up, they may find his DNA. Everybody acts like it's super difficult for DNA to show up somewhere. It's not. It's not that difficult. And if DNA was found in Brian Kohberger's house, I wouldn't be surprised. It's supposed to be there. Okay. But his DNA is supposedly found, and I get it. The prosecution's got some explaining to do, but so does the defense, as to say, well, the test showed up. I mean, they found it. They, the chain of custody looks good. The lab did their testing. They double, triple checked it. And you guys have had an opportunity to review it. And if the defense doesn't have any challenges to the testing or the validity of the DNA, you got a problem. And remember, they, in the Kohberger case, they used the genetic genealogy to get the match, right? Then they got a court order to take his DNA again to do a confirmation of that. So they won't even have to use the genetic genealogy in the trial itself because they've got the confirming DNA. So, yeah, I don't know. Alpha. Maybe he has a twin he doesn't know about and they committed the crime. Well, that's a possibility. And if the defense is going to make the my evil twin did it, then we'll have to wait and see, I believe. Listen, I believe his lawyer knows he is guilty and keeps stalling. And yes, she's an advocate. Of course, she's going to get up and say, my client is innocent. My client's in custody. Oh, I'm outraged. Well, why didn't you go to trial when you demanded a speedy trial? Right? If you can say, hey, my alibi is this, let's go do it. Right? And let me tell you, I mean, yes, they've got some phone data and it's going to be, oh, well, you can't tell exactly. It's not going to be exactly accurate, blah, blah, blah. Okay. At trial, I've never had an alibi that worked. Because if it was a valid alibi, the case would have been dismissed, ladies and gentlemen. That wouldn't have been filed if there was a valid alibi. So his alibi was just driving around in the, winter nights to enjoy the view and enjoy the stars. Okay, that's your story. You're sticking to it. You stick with that one. Let's see how it plays out. You just happen to have your phone off. Oh, you happen to lose reception. And just coincidentally, listen, it's like politics, ladies and gentlemen. There are no coincidences. Things just don't happen. Kind of that way in criminal defense cases either. Not a whole lot of coincidences. It doesn't just happen. All right. I want to thank you all for watching. If you'd like to enjoy continue the conversation, jump on over to our Patreon side, and we'll be there in about 5 minutes, and we'll continue the conversation if you'd like to do so. Become a member of our Patreon family. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show. Remember, join us next time. And yes, that pesky Constitution matters. It's the rules of the road in a criminal courtroom case. We'll see you on Patreon in 5 minutes. Thanks.